Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the City of San Diego Commission on Police Practices Transition Ad Hoc Transition Planning Committee meeting of September the 23rd, 2022. There's Brandon. And so I'll call roll from the Zoom participants. I'm Doug Case. I am the first vice chair of the commission and the chair of this committee. We have Brendan Hilpert, who is the chair of the commission. We have committee member Nancy Vaughn, and we have Kate Yavendetti from Women Occupy, who is our liaison with San Diegans for Justice. We have staff member Charmaine Mosley, our interim executive director, and Robin Resendez, who is our complaints coordinator. I forgot to mention Diana Dent, who is a member of the committee, and we have David Nymeyer. I forget the name of your consulting firm, but he is our executive search firm consultant. And then we have Carol Brown from CAB, who is joining us as an observer.
Carol.
What did I say?
I think you say Carol Brown.
No, I meant to say Gerald. I don't know how it came out, but
it's okay, Doug. I'll be Carol. So, no.
And I think I got everybody, and so we can proceed to the agenda. Okay. And do we have any public comment?
No public comment received.
Okay, updates. So the first item is the budget process. And I happened to see Henry Foster from a D4 at another event earlier this week, and he mentioned that the budget process is being pushed up this year. And I guess the council members have to indicate their budget priorities before the end of the month, by September 30th. And he was asking me if we had any budget requests, and I told him that we probably are going to be adding a couple of staff positions that we were able to fill this year because of unfilled positions. And beyond that, I'm not aware of any budget requests for next year. And so, Charmaine, maybe you can touch base with him and maybe make sure that the commission is included as a priority for them.
I will.
Okay, and maybe just put full staffing, including
Let's schedule a meeting before I touch base with Henry, just to make sure that we have our the list of what we need.
Okay. And looking at the thing that you sent out, it looks like their memo is due on the 30th. But as I recall, it simply is the council member. The process begins with the council members indicating what their budget priorities are. And so maybe you can check in with him too to see whether it's necessary maybe to ask other council members to include a full funding of the commission as one of their budget priorities as well. And then in terms of staffing, we have two ongoing searches, one for the community engagement coordinator and one for the supervising investigator. And I see David is here, so maybe David can give us an update on where we are with those.
Sure. Thank you, Doug. The supervising investigator, the first initial review deadline was this Monday. So I've been going through those. I expect actually to finish today. We received 37 applicants for that. A lot of good folks with investigator background in different capacities. The community engagement coordinator initial deadline was yesterday. I haven't gone through those in detail yet, but we did receive 55 applicants for that position. So as the process we had for the deputy director, so over the next couple of weeks, I'll be screening candidates for both positions, and then once that's completed, we'll depending on the process, I think there's probably going to be a different process for each of those positions, but I'll be able to make some recommendations for next steps after that.
Okay, and do you happen to know on the top of your head, how many of the 55 applicants for the community engagement coordinator were people who applied previously for the deputy executive director?
I don't have that number, Doug, but I mean, I will tell you, I did have contact with at least 4 or 5 people that had applied for that were going to apply. So I suspect we will see at least a few of those that were in that recruitment. So.
Okay. And then Robin was checking with the people who were on the community interviewing panel previously, the organizations, and I haven't heard back from her. And so I can follow up with her to see where we are in terms of, I think we had 11, if I remember correctly, people identified last time. And so I'll check with her to see how many people were willing to participate again this time. Okay, anything else on the people?
Sorry.
Somebody said Doug, but I don't remember who it was. Was that you, Nancy? Oh, okay.
I
Nancy,
have a comment,
go ahead.
if you can hear me. It seems to me that there's a significantly less number of applicants for the community outreach than there was before. And that was a concern that we had with the demotion in the position. So hopefully we still have a good pool of applicants.
Okay.
That's just a comment. That was just something that everybody was concerned. Well, everybody other than the commission apparently was concerned about.
Okay, and so, and we'll see that as we go through there. And it does have a, significant salary attached to it. I think it was in the neighborhood of $93,000, something like that. And
Yeah, but it's $30,000 less than the original
Right.
salary, lowest salary. I mean, it's
And then-
significantly different.
but also there may be some folks who were not didn't meet the qualifications for the deputy executive director, who may meet the qualifications for this. In fact, I know in the initial cut there were people that didn't have the managerial experience that we might consider this time. So we'll see how it turns out when we get the applicants. But I understand the concern, and hopefully Nancy knows that there's a man walking behind her in her apartment or her house. Okay, let's put the agenda back up, please. Anything else on staffing? Okay, the next issue is the implementation ordinance. I think people are aware that I think it was on Tuesday in closed session, there was an agenda item to give instructions to the city's management team for the meet and confer, which implies that the meet and confer is not complete yet, and that there are some unresolved issues. And if there are issues that remain unresolved, then it may go to an impasse. Henry Foster mentioned that it may be coming back to City Council on October 3rd. I'm not sure if that's firm. And if so, I'm not sure if it would be the ordinance is ready for consideration, or whether or not it would be a calendar item to refer the issue to an impasse. And if so, I'm not sure whether or not the specific issues that will go to an impasse are part of the agenda. So I guess we'll find out as the process unfolds. If it does go to impasse, that's going to push things out at least by a couple of months, because they have a month to put together their fact-finding panel, and then they have a month to do the process of fact-finding, and then it comes back to the council, and the council can make a final determination. So I also asked them about our amendment to the interim operating procedures regarding review of officer-involved shootings, and whether or not that was being handled separately. And he didn't know, but he said that it's common to have things bundled together. And so I'm guessing that the reason we haven't heard back on that is, it is being bundled with the implementation ordinance. And so I have nothing beyond that unless Charmaine knows anything, and I see a question from Kate.
Okay. Are you waiting for Charmaine?
Well, Charmaine didn't raise her hand, so I guess she doesn't have anything beyond what I said. And so go ahead, Kate.
Okay, well, we had a meeting with staff from Sean Ila Rivera's office a couple days ago. And what she told us is that that agenda item had been pulled. So that seems to be that there's some confusion about what happened in the closed session. But you seem to know, did Henry, how did you get the information about what actually happened in the closed session? Because we've asked most of the council members and have gotten no response because, you know, it's a closed session, it's a big secret. So, and I would also wonder if the meet and confer is still going on, if CPP will renew its request for Dwayne to be involved in that. It just seems to me essential that the CPP have some representation from somebody who knows what the CPP needs, rather than just what the PLA wants. So I don't know if you have an answer to either of those questions.
Yeah, when I talked to Henry, it was on Wednesday. I didn't ask him specifically about what happened in the closed session because he couldn't tell me anyway. And he didn't mention that. He did mention the October 3rd, but that could have been something that was talked about prior to the closed sessions. I don't know whether or not the closed session item got canceled or not. Charmaine's handed up, so maybe Charmaine has some information.
Yes, and yes, it was on the closed meeting agenda, and after that meeting, there was nothing to report out. Now, if it was, I believe that if it was going to be sent over to the October 3rd meeting of the council, then that would have been reported out as previous, as done in previous meetings.
So,
Maybe
okay.
Old.
You know, and I guess the case second to question, I think we agree entirely, but I don't know how many times we're going to be told no. So I'm not sure that it's.
Well, who tells you no? Is it just HR or is it the D4?
No, D4 is not involved in making
members?
that decision. It was the employee relations department.
Well, no, the council authorizes the resolution that says who's going to be involved in the meet and confer. The council, it's a council resolution. So I don't see why the president of the council or D4 or somebody can't put that forward. Why would HR be in control of something like that? I mean, I know why, but it is a council resolution that gets voted on.
Yeah, and I guess the mayor also has said no, and so we can bring, we have, as I talked about in a couple of minutes, we have a meeting scheduled with Sean Ila Rivera next week, and so we can add that to our agenda to ask him that question.
We were essentially told that I guess the ordinance or whatever it was, has an exclusive list of who is allowed to attend. And we've basically been told you're not on that list. So I think, as everyone here knows, we've made several memos, several requests, and we've, been politely but curtly told, we know how to reach you if we have questions. And they have asked some questions that we've given some feedback. They've sent those to Charmaine as our interim executive director. They have sent us some questions and we responded. But yeah, I think to Doug's point, we've asked repeatedly and they've politely told us, we don't need you there.
Okay. And so if you can pull the agenda back up, please, Robin. Okay. Okay. Anything new on office space? I haven't heard anything new. Is it? Brandon's shaking his head and I can't see whether or not.
Yeah, I think the last we've heard is we're still waiting for the city attorney to review the contract. I want to say that was a week or so ago. So when we were in NACOL, there was the last update that it was still on his list of things to do.
Okay. And then, as I mentioned, we have a meeting scheduled meeting with Council President Ila Rivera. I think it's on Wednesday, the 28th, if I remember correctly. And right now we have 4 things on the agenda. If anybody has anything else, we can talk about that as well. One is the selection process for the permanent commissioners, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more momentarily. Second is the selection process for the permanent executive director, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more momentarily as well. Third is to give him an update of where we stand in terms of commissioners and our dwindling number of commissioners. And fourth is the item we just added of expressing our frustration with not being able to participate in meeting and confer, and maybe getting a sense from him of where things stand. So anything else other than those 4 items that anybody wants us to discuss? Kate, your hand is raised.
I'm sorry, I can't get to the hand quick enough. Yeah, I would ask, we've been asking that we get the draft ordinance as far in advance as possible and not just the 72 hours. I think SDJ did an email blast asking for it to be 10 days ahead of time. But, you know, as soon as it's available, and we know that, well, I think it's a reasonable assumption that it will be available more than 72 hours in advance of the city council meeting. So, and as president of the council, you know, he would presumably get it for the agenda. So that's, if you're willing to make that ask, I would appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, we can add that as well. We're talking about the implementation ordinance. So, okay, anything else? So that gives us 5 things to talk about. And Brandon, is that going to be just you and me and Charmaine with the council president, or is Kevin going to be joining us as well? And you're on mute. You're on mute, Brandon.
I will check with Kevin, but I think it's just going to be us. But I will check with him to see if he's going to be able to attend.
Okay. And then so we can go to new business. The first item is the recruitment and selection of permanent commissioners. Because once the implementation ordinance is adopted, we need to begin the process of recruiting and selecting a permanent commissioners. I know that we are in the process of collecting names, and that's being done through the Office of Boards and Commissions, even though we're not part of that office. We're using their online application process, and Charmaine indicated that there was a link put on our page. I haven't verified that yet, so that people who are looking to join the commission can easily submit an application. One question I asked of Henry, and we'll be asking of the council president when we meet with him, is what the intent of the city council is with regard to the city council district designated seats. As people recall, there'll be 25 seats on the new commission, and they'll be appointing 25 people in the initial appointments, half of them for, I forget how long the terms are. Are they 4-year terms? Anyway, however long the terms are, half will be for the full term, and the other half will be for a half term, so that they are staggered. They include 2 youth positions of ages 18 to 24, 1 for each of the 9 city council districts. I think there are 5, if I remember correctly, that are required to come from city census tracts that are low or middle income. And then the other 9 are going to be at large, and there were some recommended skill sets that were included including such things as prior experience with law enforcement contacts, experience with homeless or substance abuse, experience in police oversight, and there are several different things that are included there. The question I asked was whether or not the city council members would be making the selection for the person for their city council designated seat. And if so, what that process would be. And in the brief discussion I had with Henry, he indicated that the best process, which I agree with, would be to have everybody apply through the same application process, and to have the nominating committee recommend to city council members an individual to serve in that seat, and then it would be up to them to make the decision. It's the tradition of the city council that they defer to the city council member to make that decision for those types of designated seats. And that's something we also will can be discussing with Sean, maybe with him. In addition, you may recall that the draft implementation ordinance allows the commission to establish a process for making nominations. It doesn't require it, and doesn't require that they, accept the nominations, but I assume that they will, and I assume that'll remain in the ordinance. Our, previous proposal, which we would have to codify once the implementation ordinance is adopted, was that there would be a nominating committee composed of 9 persons. 3 would be current or three current or former commission members, and then 6 community members, to include 2 academic professionals who specialize in policing, criminal justice, and or civil rights, and 4 from community nonprofit organizations, including specific seats for experts in racial and identity profiling. And so I'm not sure we can really do much with that until we have at least the draft ordinance back, but I think we need to begin thinking about what that nominating process is going to look like, because we want to get it implemented as soon as the implementation ordinance is adopted. Any thoughts or comments on that? Okay, like I said, that's one of our agenda items for discussion with the council president. We also have previously discussed a selection process for the permanent executive director that would include a executive search firm, utilizing a process like we have used with our other positions, and having 2 presentations, one presentation to a community panel, and the second presentation to the full commission, and then having perhaps the cabinet make recommendations of 3 individuals to the city council, and then have the city council make the final determination. And we discussed that briefly with Council President Elo, actually, I think even before he was council president, and he was the one who suggested that we not rank order the 3 people. But anyway, we want to run by him that process, because that'll also be something that'll need to be implemented soon after the implementation ordinance is in effect. And so the process will be, first we seat the new permanent commissioners, and then we begin the selection process for the permanent executive director. And it doesn't actually mean that there couldn't be some overlap there. So, the recruitment process, could begin before the new permanent commissioners are officially seated. Any thoughts on that? Okay, and again, we can come back after we had that discussion and we can discuss it further. I think we've already discussed the implementation ordinance. Everybody is kind of in the holding pattern, and we're also kind of in the dark as to what's happening with the meet and confer. And the same thing with the standard operating procedures for, I'm sorry, no. And also the standard operating procedure for the review of officer involved shootings. Item D on the agenda is another thing that we're going to need to do soon after the implementation ordinance is adopted, and that is standard operating procedures for review of the internal investigations. Because as we've discussed before, the new commission will have the ability to review and evaluate not just complaints, but will be able to review and evaluate all investigations of misconduct that are completed by the by internal affairs. And my understanding is that approximately 40% of the investigations that are currently done are ones that we never see because they don't emanate from complaints. And so it'll be the decision of the permanent commission to determine what that operating procedure will be, but I think we need to give a recommendation to them. My recommendation would be that we do it in the very same way that we do complaint-based ones. And we probably will be making some recommendations with regard to streamlining the complaint-based reviews. But anyway, I wanted to put that on the agenda because that's something we'll need before we can begin doing those reviews. We're going to have to develop a standard operating procedure and have that approved by the city council. One option might be simply to adopt one that says we'll do it the same way as we do the complaint-based ones and do that on an interim basis so that we can begin doing those as the new commission works out their policies and procedures. So thoughts on that? Okay. So I don't see anybody's hand raised. You all
Well,
are.
I have a question. So I
Okay.
can't find the hand thing. So where do these 40% come from? Internal?
Right. And so there are things like, if a sergeant or another officer becomes aware of something that an officer has done that's a violation of the policy, then it goes through that process. And so
it could also be like internal sexual harassment stuff. And
yeah, actually that's a separate category of things that we'll have access, we'll have the ability to investigate as well. But I don't know what the composition of those internal complaints are in terms of what the breakdown is in terms of the types of violations they are. We've asked for some statistics. I don't think we've gotten them, have we, Charmaine?
Short answer is no.
Okay, and actually we're scheduling a meeting with the chief, and so I know that's been on our past agendas, and so we can make sure that gets included on the next agenda. Okay, so that brings us to agenda items and scheduling of the next meeting. The next meeting would be next Friday, the 30th. Let me just double check to make sure there's nothing on our calendar at the office. I don't think that there is. Yes, I have no conflicts, and the senator is going to be out of town, so that'll be good. So there won't likely be a conflict. Does anybody else have any problems with next week? Then we'll do next week, same time, same place. And I think we can put back on the agenda those items we had this time after we have our discussion with the council presidents, and we'll have some better direction of how to proceed on those items. And maybe we'll have some more information on meeting for, I really don't know. But we can put those same 4 agenda items next week. So anything else that people? Okay. And And we also can, we'll have a report of the process, I mean, the update on the community panel for the community engagement coordinator. Okay, then seeing nothing, I think we can adjourn. This will be one of our quicker meetings, half an hour. So I have
Thank